keep going. Okay, now we're recording. Thank you, Jennifer. So if anybody's just tuning in now, all that you missed is the tour of Zoom and a little bit of grounding and connecting with the place where we are and the people that we're with. We are now recording. Okay, so let's try out the chat. And what I am going to do is, just one moment, I am going to share my screen with you and give you a question to respond to in the chat. And you can get a sense of what this is like. So here is your question. For many of us, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, as we're going through this crisis, which is what's gathered us here today, at least it's spring. And I'm spending a lot of time outside. I think a lot of people are spending a lot of time outside, getting some, even though we are sheltered in place at home, we may be connecting with the natural world. I imagine people on this call are doing some of that. So I have a question for you about how are you connecting with nature during this time? So love to just put your thoughts in the chat, daily talks in the daily walks in the neighborhood. Suzanne's talking to trees. In Peru, they aren't even allowed to go outside. So it's more through prayer. Daily walks, gardening, lots of gardening, studying biomimicry. Yeah, so if you just scroll through the chat, you can see what other folks are doing. And you can extend your chat window to make it big and you can see lots of voices at once. Excellent. Okay. One other thing, if you are distracted by the chat going by, you also have the choice to close your chat window and then just open it up when we have times where we're asking you particular questions. So that's an option too. You can use your Zoom interface however you'd like to. All right, let's dive into the material here. Today's session is about life lessons for sheltering in place. And we called it local attunement and global connectivity. And I just want to say a little bit about why we're offering this now and about this time, about our context. This isn't new information, but it does feel important to name it. What we share on this call and really around the world is that we're concerned about an illness that is spreading and bringing with it a lot of disruption and fear and disorientation, and for many, many people, death. And the disease has an interesting way of mirroring human symptoms that mirror in some ways what's happening to the planet itself. Through the climate crisis, through some of the economic systems and the inequities that people are suffering from that sense of choking, that sense of fever, that sense of not being able to breathe fully. We're going through this and our planet is going through it too. And in many ways, we're being asked to read the signs and to pause and to relate to each other in different ways. And we are seeing the response. There's less pollution in the air as we're all staying at home. There's less traffic. We're hearing birds singing. So we are gathered here today with you. We asked all of us to come together as a community of learning, as a community of practice, to have a conversation about deliberately aligning with life, to engage with nature's 3.8 billion years of evolution and evolutionary intelligence about how to best sustain and thrive amidst disruption, and how to create conditions conducive to life, individually and collectively. That's why we're here. So that's really what our purpose is today. And I'm wondering if this resonates with you. Maybe give me a nod or give me some words in the chat. Is this a worthwhile use of your hour? I'm seeing some nods, thank you. So much of our work at Biomimicry for Social Innovation is to translate life's principles, those things that all of life does, into practices that leaders can use to make their work and our collective culture more regenerative and more life-affirming. This is a picture of a body of work that our friends at Biomimicry 3.8 have distilled through all of the biological research about what do all organisms on life do. This is called Life's Principles. And it is, I think of it as the operating manual for being an earthling. If you're an organism on Earth, you do these things. And they are a touch point for how we could be living more sustainably on this planet. At Biomimicry for Social Innovation, we're translating these principles into practices that leaders can use to make their work more life-affirming. So in our Living Systems Leadership Workshop, of which this is kind of a distillation in some ways, we've distilled 6 practices. We call these Living Systems Leadership Practices, and we bring these into organizations and we teach these in our workshops. So I'm curious, as you look at these, which ones jump out at you? Are there some where you find your interest most drawn? You could put that in the chat too. Attune to local context seems to be important now. Indeed it is. Evolutionary change. Cultivating cooperative relationships. Simple rules. Lots. They're all scrolling by. In fact, all of these are about engaging evolutionary change. And they're all relevant for these times. We'll start with the first one over, the ones that many of you have pointed to, attune to local context. Because it so happens that with the COVID-19 crisis, we are being asked, we're being forced to slow things down. And we are becoming more globally connected through this crisis. We're also becoming more locally attuned. We are literally being rooted at home. And because any kind of adaptive cycle starts with being connected with place, we're going to start there. This mandate about being locally attuned and globally connected, it's actually a deep pattern that's found in the natural world. It's how cells work in our bodies. It's how flocks navigate. It's how herds migrate. So today we're going to make that explicit and learn how life actually does it. So this is the first of our 6 practices, attune to local context. I won't go into all the details on the back, but this is an image of a card that we make as a learning tool for all of the practices in our Living Systems Leadership Workshop. Some of you have seen this card, some of you have worked with it. So the essence here is that life meets all of its functional needs in context. Every organism on the planet is in a dynamic relationship with its environment and what's called the selection pressures, the opportunities and challenges particular to that place. Whether or not it survives is dependent on sensing and attuning and aligning with that habitat, with that place. How do I fit in here? And the more aligned an organism is with its local conditions and its resources, then the more likely it is to thrive. And they're able to remain resilient when things change, when things get tougher. So this attuning to local context is critically important. These penguins are very well adapted to living here, but they wouldn't do so well in this environment. And it's true for us too. In our human environments, we're adapted to the context in which we work, in which we live, in which we share community. Our physical habitat, whether we're used to working in an office or we're used to working at home. Also our mental and psychological habitat, who we share these habitats with, that's all part of our local context. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here for a second. So when we do nature-based strategic planning in organizations, the first thing we ask is, tell us about your context. What is your rootedness? What does here mean to you? Who are your partners? Who are your rivals? What are the norms? How are you and your team well suited to this local context? That's the starting place. We ask these questions before we get into conversations about building resiliency or how they want to grow or what kind of evolutionary change they want to make. That happens too, but we start with, what does here mean? And part of why this time is so difficult now is that for most of us, our contexts have been turned upside down, right? As my friend Ronnie, who's on this call, and by the way, thank you to the People Piece for the tutorial and the room, the bigger room, 164 folks now in our room. Anyway, as Ronnie said so succinctly, none of us is an expert in leading through a global pandemic that has huge economic and social consequences. Nobody does. Everybody is being asked to do things differently, in different places with multiple losses, and under this looming threat of illness and even death. Most of us are cut off from our colleagues. We're not able to see our loved ones. How many of you have people that you would love to see in nursing homes, or people who are sick or elderly, that we're not doing that anymore, right? And how many of you have been on, who's been on more Zoom calls than ever before in your life, right? This is part of our local context now. We're all in this period of disorientation. And even though COVID-19 has spread all over the world and affects nearly all of us in some way, our experiences are very different. So maybe turn it to gallery view for a second, and I'm wondering how many of us are trying to work at home at the same or even an increased pace, but now you've got kids at home, or you've got your partner at home, or you've got a whole family at home, right? And then how many of you are suddenly without work? Maybe dealing with that financial stress, maybe feeling some isolation, loneliness. I've also been hearing about folks who are doing fine on a day-to-day basis, but are feeling guilty because their situation isn't as hard as many, many others. Or there's this looming dread of illness and uncertainty of what's coming, right? So we have different situations, and it's important to attune to what our different situation is. So I'm going to go back to the chat here for a second. In a moment. So turn yourselves to your chat, and I'd like you to address this question. How has this crisis affected you and the way that you live and work? And if you were to come up with some adjectives to describe this, what would this be?
Hey, Toby.
Yeah.
Your screen share isn't looking the way that it did prior. You might want to unshare it and try again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Harry.
Stop share. Share screen. Excuse me.
You're doing great.
Like this. Share screen. How's
Better.
that?
Perfect.
Okay,
Good job.
great. And Roxy, this is where we're going to turn to you. So in a moment, I'm going to ask Roxy to unmute herself. And Roxy has offered to do some scanning of what's coming through the chat. And this is a big job because there are so many ideas coming through this chat. So Roxy's going to scan what's here and look for patterns. And in a moment, she's going to unmute herself, please, Roxy, and reflect on what you're seeing.
Mm.
And we can all be looking at what's here.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm trying to pick it all up and look for what's coming through. And I feel like I'm seeing a lot about sort of the uncertainty. There's like two tacks, the uncertainty, the loss of control, a sense of the shift creating instability. But there's also folks reflecting on how things have made them focus, how things are, I think, positive, the positives coming out of the shifts that are happening. Someone just wrote hopeful, but there's a tension between the things that are happening that are making us feel destabilized and sort of reacting to those things and getting used to those things, whether it's the inability to hug loved ones, but then also looking at the opportunities like creativity and hope and the ability to adapt. And for me personally, I would just say that, you know, working with healthcare workers in this moment, work for $11.99, and we organize healthcare workers all over the East Coast of America. And at a time when I think folks are having a sense of slowdown. I think Toby spoke about that in the beginning, that things feel like you have a chance to sort of breathe. For me and those that I work with, that is not this moment. This moment is urgent because our members' lives are very much on the line as they try to protect themselves so that they can protect the community. And so I've just been reflecting about that tension, I guess, between the need to slow down to become attuned, but also wanting to make sure we're present to meet the moment that our members need us to meet. And so that's sort of how, you know, I've been orienting to the shift that's happening.
Great. Thank you, Roxy. Thank you. Yeah, I think that as leaders, we have to recognize that it's not business as usual, right? No matter what you put in the chat, things are different now. It's just simply not possible for us to be able to operate and lead with the same level of confidence, with the same kind of focus, with the same kind of productivity. Some folks are very much on the front lines, the way Roxy's been talking about, and I'm sure, and there are equivalent people in all of our communities. And even just being in our homes, things are different. We can't have those same capacities, and we can't expect those from others as well. I'm curious if there are some leadership skills that you used to rely on of yourself during business as usual times that just aren't useful now. Maybe put some thoughts about that in the chat too. And what new leadership skills are you adapting into? Jennifer and I were talking about this the other day. Can I share your thoughts, Jen?
Absolutely.
She said, you know, I'm used to being like really consistent and really certain. That's one of the superpowers that I bring. Only now that actually isn't useful. And I have to lean into my capacity to be more nimble and more adaptable and turn on a dime and be willing to be super flexible. So that's just one example of how these times are calling for different things from us. You know, I have been noticing that for many folks, it seems like we're kind of starting to find our rhythm. We're 3-4 weeks now into social isolation. When I started designing this webinar, the feedback I was getting from people was very different than it is now. But I think we need to be prepared that it's going to keep changing. And there may be more waves of disorientation and uncertainty and fear coming as more people get sick, as people in your own networks, your own loved ones are exposed to the virus. Things might be even more painful a month from now. So just to be aware of that. And so now, while we have this opportunity of being sheltered in place, we need to build this capacity to retune and to respond to what's actually happening in the context that we're in a dynamic and ongoingly adaptive way. Luckily, there are a lot of other species who are, have evolved to be really good at this in the millions and billions of years that they've been here before we got here. So I'm going to share just a few examples, and let's hope I can get this right. Hold on, there's this funny thing that's happening that is different. Excuse me, folks. Now I've lost my cursor. Take a breath, attuning to being flexible in my local context. There it is. Okay. Are you seeing a turtle?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to give you just a few examples of other organisms and how they attune to their local context. So turtles in Michigan and in many other places where there are vernal ponds, ponds that dry up. They're in the spring and then they dry up. When this seasonal pond dries up, a turtle will methodically seek another pond nearby and only grow to the appropriate size of their new habitat. So they are actually optimizing their level of growth and development to the reality of their own context, their new context. Here's another example. White-crowned sparrows, they've adapted their songs over time in cities like San Francisco, where they've been studied for about 40 years. Scientists have realized that as traffic has increased, as city noise gets louder, as there's more and more activity in the city, they've had to raise the pitch of their songs so that the other white-crowned sparrows can hear them. And interestingly, they also live in the Central Valley of California, where during this same time, the vegetative growth has gotten thicker and thicker. In those places, they've had to lower the pitch of their song so that their mates can hear them, attuning to local context. This very colorful and tasty octopus is so adept at being locally attuned and responsive that when a predator is nearby that they sense might want to eat them, this guy, he can instantly change his color to hide in place, essentially becoming invisible. But then if a sexy she-octopus comes around from the other side and swims behind him, he can light up just that side of his body so that she might want to meet him and they can pursue possibly being mates. So they can attune on each side of their body. They can respond on each side of their body depending on what that local context is. I'm wondering if some of you are doing that on your Zoom calls, if you also have kids or other people in the room. Here's a very recent example of attuning to a changing local context during this coronavirus lockdown. There's been a herd of wild mountain goats who live in the hills up above a coastal Welsh town. And they've recently begun roaming the streets of the town. They hadn't done that before. People knew they were there, but there were only occasional sightings. But now with the people and the cars gone, they're coming down from the mountains for the first time. So the deep pattern here in nature, when disruption happens, is that it's not so much about working harder or trying to get control or having a well-conceived plan. What the natural world does is more about sensing and being responsive and being attuned to one's context in its dynamic state. So I would love your ideas on this. And I'm going to ask Pamela to please unmute yourself. And here is a question for everybody to please put into the chat, your responses. What are you learning about attuning and retuning? And how are you sensing your way through uncertainty? Whatever comes up for you about that. And Pamela, this is a chance for you to take a look at this, review some things that people are saying, and when you're ready to please unmute yourself and give us some reflection of what you see.
Beautiful seeing what's coming through. So far, what I'm seeing is a prioritization that people are doing, and a prioritization of reflection, of pausing, connecting to spirit, taking an assessment of what's really important. Listening, grounding, slowing down. Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's not the fear panic mode. It's not the amygdala. So it's really, and stepping into abundance. So all of you are attuning into your natural grace and power. That's lovely. It's very inspiring. Yesterday,
yeah, we can do this and see what's there. Excuse me, Pamela, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You were going to say?
I was just encouraging other folks to scan because I'm seeing what you're seeing, and there's so much here.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you experiencing, Pamela? You live close to the land. You're very connected with movement folks.
Yeah, it's an interesting duality I have of being very deeply on a land-based life. So yesterday, I walked out, the snow had crusted and it was about 1.5 feet deep. And out into the western pastures, I saw incredible tracks, just a whole swath of them. And I wanted to follow them. And they were clearly elk tracks. And by the size, I could tell they were mama cows and juveniles, right? And just sort of tracking their flow, which way they were coming, when they stopped. Clearly there was a threat. They went back. And it was a beautiful attuning. And I felt so enlivened, which allows me, when I'm with movement leaders who are adapting on the front lines in Texas or in Kentucky, to help them bring themselves back to how they're attuning in their own context. Folks in Texas have navigated a lot of devastation with hurricanes and such. So they're actually leading the way in how to adapt and attune. So it's really wonderful to bring them back to their power in this time.
Beautiful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to note that we are really at the starting place of this adaptive cycle. This is the beginning of what could be a very big adaptive cycle, individually, within our families, within our work, societally. And this practice of attuning to local context as a starting place, what it means now, many of you have been talking about this, what it means is paying attention, opening up our senses in new ways, like other organisms do, being flexible with what is, and cultivating these capacities. And like any organism that senses threat and becomes hyper alert, we are trying to manage for our safety. We may be finding our brains and our nervous systems in overdrive. Maybe not all the time, but maybe sometimes, maybe when we least expect it. That's natural, because we're becoming hyper alert now in this disorientation that we find ourselves in. So maybe instead of trying to reestablish control, this is an opportunity to get reoriented to our surroundings, to tracks through the snow, to pay attention to those who are closest to us, to notice what's here with us. Maybe what's been here all along, that we haven't really slowed down enough to give our full attention and give our full love. It's actually, that is training ourselves. Can we appreciate our home? Can we appreciate our neighborhood in a new way? Spending, for those of you who have kids at home, spending all day with your kids could be really challenging at times, but can we fall in love with them again, deeper, for some of the details that we haven't been seeing while they're off at school? Maybe this is an opportunity for us to form some new narratives about what it means to survive and thrive here, right here. And then our immune systems, as they start to settle, and we have the resourcefulness that comes from being attuned and connected, our evolutionary capacity to be able to really sense into what's most important now and adapt accordingly, that will grow. So let me just kind of check in a little bit. I think what I want to do here is, I was thinking about putting us into some smaller groups, but I think what I'd like to do instead is see if there are folks in the group that would like to share briefly. I think we have time for 6 or 7 minutes of some conversation. So here is the, let me share my screen. Here's what I'd like you to be thinking about for a moment. How are you becoming more attuned to your changing context and to your home habitat? And what are you evolving personally and with your families and your colleagues as practices to help you adapt and thrive? So let's think about that for a second. And if you would like to comment on this question, if you go down to the participants section underneath your screen on the navigation bar, you can click on participants, you can find yourself and you can raise your hand. I am noticing that I can't have the slide up. Oh, there it is. I can see participants. Okay, good. So if you have something that you would like to say to address this, and I'm going to ask folks to speak concisely, because there are 162 of us now on this call. And I'm just going to let a few folks think about this. Lindsay, I see your hand up. Could you unmute yourself? And
Hi.
so we can
Yes.
see you
So,
and hear you.
I've often said in my household that moods are contagious, and now I'm really having to practice that wisdom and recognize that as anger is contagious and frustration, so is calm. And so just remembering and trying to help, and we all are trying to help each other in my home, just maintain and cultivate a sense of calm.
Excellent. There's actually a lot of neuroscience research about that shows that, that they're called mirror neurons, that how one walks into a room, and you can walk into a group, and if you're bringing anger and fear, that will literally infect and shape the mood of the group. If you're bringing calm and care and love, that will permeate through the group. Sounds very woo-woo, but it actually tracks in our brain patterning. Good. Others. Sayer, coming to us from Louisville.
Hi. I think two of the things that have been most at play at work, for me, I work at a national nonprofit organization, is the importance of redundancy and decentralization. So in this moment when any of us could become sick at any moment, we need to know things that maybe only one person knows. And so taking advantage of this opportunity to do more of that. The other thing too that has just been clear is people trusting their gut that they need to step in when there's a leadership vacuum and taking action, and that some action is better than no action. So those have been, there have been many more, but those have been sort of at the top of what I've been thinking about.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, what you said about redundancy and decentralization, along with diversity, those are what I call the 3Ds of life's lessons on resilience. That in the natural world, building in these backup plans and not having all of the decision-making, you could say, in one place, like the octopus who's decentralized, or many other organisms that have backup plans. That's all part of being resilient. Jen.
Toby, there's somebody who would like to share, and it won't let her raise her hand. Looks like it's Stephanie Earle. If you can unmute her.
I don't know if I can unmute Stephanie Earle. Let's see.
And you're still the host. And hopefully Rachel is still here, because I think this is a head nod for Rachel's beautiful work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
There you
I'm
are.
off mute. Hi. Yes, thank you. This is kind of a tribute to Rachel, and I have my deck of leadership cards from the women's retreat that I pulled out and started looking at. But here's my decas. Fit form to function with more intention. Thanks.
Beautiful. I have another person who's been waiting to speak, Joanna from Beirut. And then Rachel, if you do have good Wi-Fi and access to join us, I'd love to have you join us as well.
Hi everyone, how are you? I'm so glad to reconnect with you. For me, it's been really welcoming the unfamiliar and acquiring new skills and adapting. That's what I learned that is the most important, the importance of being resilient. There's also how important cooperation is and how it's important to share knowledge and to find ways to really be in service, because in the end we're present to be in the service of our community and others. And I'm really getting so much in tune with that at the moment, and connecting with my community and the people that I'm fortunate to be with.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. Yes, I see some other hands up as well.
Awesome. There's a request to just say real quick, say the 3Ds again.
Yes, these are the principles of resilience based on the natural world. are diversity, so doing things in more than one way, decentralization, so not having everything, all the decision-making or all of the operations rooted in one place, and diversity, decision-making, and redundancy. I call it duplication, just because I need things to help me remember. So duplication is, as Sayer was pointing out, not having just one person in your office know how to do critical functions. So these are ways that life has evolved to be able to bounce back after disruption, to be able to be resilient in tough times. And Jen, you're the host now, just so you know. Rachel, are you still out there? Can you, can we hear or see you at this point?
I hope so. My picture is showing. I mean, I can see me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. Is it showing now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'd say one thing is that I'm wilder than ever. And the wildness comes in what I'm eating. I was bemoaning the fact that I'm not going to grocery stores, ran out of the onions from my stores. And because I invited herbalists to come and harvest the wild foods and the medicines that are needed for the community from my land, one herbalist found this store of huge wild onions that she said, there are plenty here. They have these big fat roots. And she harvested and shared with me, where I invited them to come share with me. So there's plenty of wild food to eat. And if I just get wilder with what I share and offer to others of what I have as resources, there's more than enough, rather than feeling deprived.
Thank you. I see two other hands up. We've got like a minute or two. So I'd love to invite Dee briefly. Unmute yourself, please, and share with us what you have to share.
Oh, you got me?
Got you. Hi, Dee. Good to see you.
Actually, to Rachel's note about unwilding, I have kind of taken off the change of my rules every day. So I live alone, and it's been interesting that that's a skill to have in 2020. Who knew? I'm quite blissful and sort of walking that line with guilt as well that you mentioned. But I've been, letting myself sleep longer, all kinds of things, and just seeing what emerges without the constraints that I put on myself to define my productivity. That, I think most of us in this country confuse with valuing ourselves.
Great, thank you, Dee. And Jennifer just asked someone to chat, maybe make sure that's okay. Please chat, definitely chat. You don't have to speak. Is that what you were asking?
No, there's some people who were talking about, can we send the chat to everybody after the meeting, which we can technically. If anybody has any concern about that, then you should let Toby or I know prior to the end of this meeting. Otherwise, we'll send that out.
Great. Pamela, I see your hand up.
Oh, I'm noticing some chats between and directly with me around those who are coming out of a migrant experience. You know, those of us who have immigrated, cultures, land masses, oceans, and our First Nations Indigenous friends. When under duress, we've figured out how to navigate to survive, and some of us are learning how to thrive and how to draw from that wisdom. So those were voices that I'm seeing and hearing in a chat conversation. Wanted to just name them in. Sarita was one of them, and Zeli is another. Yeah, or no, maybe I misread.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward. Those are really important insights. There is so much to share here. We just have about 10 minutes left. I see there's still a couple hands left, but I think I need to shift. And because I want to pull this all together with some strategies that we can glean from nature. And I think they're very much reflected in what you've been sharing and in both verbally and in the chat, that will help us, some things that you can take home with you. Actually, you're already home. So some things that you can remember as the essence of this. Sorry. Come on, technology. There we go. Do you see a screen that says nature-inspired strategies for attuning to local context?
Looks good, Toby.
Great. Okay. So again, you can add comments in the chat as they seem applicable to you. But I want to just share 6 strategies that may be helpful to remember. So the first is take care of yourselves and take care of your people. This is was distilled by David Rock from the Neuro Leadership Institute, who's been doing a lot of great teaching at this time, and I think it just really captures it. We need to be gentle with each other now. It's important to tend closely to our own nervous systems and those of the people around us. You know, we evolved as social beings, so we are tuned to be physically and psychologically and very intricately connected with those people who are most central in our lives, especially in times of stress. And in many cases, we don't have that now. So it's important to be gentle, take care of ourselves, and use our senses to be attending to what you and those closest to you need most. That's the first order of business. I encourage you to release expectations and non-essentials. Life optimizes instead of maximizes. That's one of the core principles of the natural world. Just exactly what's needed and nothing more. So this is a good time to be asking ourselves regularly, many of you mentioned this in the chat, asking ourselves, what is most important now and why? And a day later or a week later or 5 minutes later, you may need to ask that question again. This is a time for us to be extending deadlines, to give us some time to feel into what that adaptive response might be. And let go of trying to do 50 things. Maybe just celebrate the one thing that you did really well. I've been watching the trees open their buds in my garden. This is a picture from my garden, actually. And what I'm noticing at this time of year is that there's this quickening happening. In some ways, it just amazes me how much more has opened up every day. And yet at the same time, it's deliciously slow.
Hey,
Do one thing well. Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
repeat the author for number 1?
David Rock from the Neuro Leadership Institute. He's been putting out just great material. And you can find that in the chat, I think, now. Become devoted to local, whatever that means to you. It might be nesting in your own home. It might be, I've been hearing about people who are doing virtual home tours over laptops on Zoom with their colleagues. I really encourage you, if you can, to get outside every day. There's lots of research that shows that being outside in nature does help our nervous systems. And just 5 minutes of being out in the natural world reduces the cortisol levels, the stress hormones in our bodies. And as stress reduces, then our frontal lobe and our capacity to think better and be adaptive can come back on. So really encourage you to tap into what's close, really get to know your neighborhood, notice the birds returning. And there's another resource that, Jen, maybe you could put in the chat. The Biomimicry Institute is doing something called 30 Days of Reconnecting. I think some of you are involved in that. Every day you get a prompt, and it's a nature journaling practice. And there's this huge global community connected online, people from all over the world who are doing this every day together. It's a way to stay connected globally with others who have that shared interest, to be connected locally, and to actually be able to remove yourself from your screen and get out into nature and get some training in how to observe and participate with the natural world. There's some amazing things happening there. People are submitting their drawings and they're just incredible. So become devoted to local. Leverage cycles and cyclic processes whenever you can. In nature, that's how efficiency is created, and that's how ease is created. Nature is just full of cycles. And those repeating patterns and that cyclic flow is a way to make efficient use of energy. So build structure into your day and stick with it. Build structure into your work with colleagues. That will bring in some certainty and give folks a little bit of a sense of, like, I've got control over the situation, both of which are good for our nervous system and will bring down your stress levels. So we want to try to minimize decision points, especially when we're feeling a little freaked out as things might be getting worse. And just relish in those cycles of the natural world. It's a great time to start a garden. I got my spring things planted this weekend. Now I'm happy with the world and everything's okay. I know what my next few months are going to be focused on, in addition to everything else. Embrace opportunities to tune your antenna in new ways. Try new things. If there was an evolutionary approach to leadership, it would be try lots of things, fail fast, put more energy into what's working, and release those things that aren't. This is good for you, and it's good for the people that you're working with. And one of the keys from nature is to shorten feedback loops. Try things, see how it goes. If it works, do it again. If it doesn't, let it go and move on to something else. I'm trying this new thing with doing a webinar like this. We'll see what your feedback is about whether it's worthwhile or not. And you want to be listening to the subtle signals. How much news can I actually handle? Pay attention to your own system there. And then finally, just to always remember to be locally attuned and globally connected. Just like the body cells and the flocks. This is about rooting in place with an aware, making decisions now that are intimately connected with the health of humanity. And that's important to remember at all times. So I'm going to ask you to put into the chat, whoops, maybe put into the chat. Jennifer's waving her hands. Yes, Jen.
Robin reminded me that everybody can save the whole chat themselves by using those 3 dot buttons down on the bottom right. So let's have folks do that. If you want to save the chat, save that now. Okay, that's all.
Great, thank you. And maybe if you've got some ideas to put into the chat about what one strategy of these do you want to reinforce for yourself that you will take on to be more attuned to your local context.
Look at you all. You're like dandelion seeds.
I can relate. Toby, would you mind explaining what we're doing with these numbers? Just real quick.
With these numbers. Oh, people are putting in numbers. Okay, I was just asking which of these strategies do you feel like you want to take on, particularly to remind yourself?
I see. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
So
while people are reflecting on that too, I just want to confirm with you that we're going to send a recording and we're going to send a copy of your slides. Is that right?
We will send a recording. Well, I think we'll send a PDF of the slides. Sure, if that's helpful for people, happy to do that.
Someone mentioned that she wanted to use some of the prompts as journaling prompts, which I thought was a lovely invitation for anybody who found the prompts interesting.
Very good. We have a couple minutes left. I want to leave you with some resources. You'll see it on your screen now. We are hopefully offering the Living Systems Leadership Workshop this August in northern New Mexico. Assuming that we're out of shelter in place by then, we will be convening. This is a women's retreat, so we will be convening folks together to go deeper into these practices. I think Stephanie mentioned the Life's Principles leadership cards. This is a tool that we've created that each card has a life's principle on it, has a little story on the back. You have a natural mentor. If you're interested in ordering those, there's a website there where you can order that and learn more biomimicry that way. We do offer coaching, nature-based coaching. We do offer consulting in organizations to help folks think more through the lens of the natural world as they do these deep practices to realign with how things actually are on Earth. And there's the link for the biomimicry.org 30 days nature prompts. And just in our final moment, I am going to ask you, Jen, can we put up the poll? If there are particular ways that you would like to stay connected.
Can you unshare your screen, Tobe?
Unshare my screen.
And okay, are you ready for the poll?
We're going to launch that ending poll, yes.
And how long do you want me to leave it there for people to click through?
Why don't you just, I don't know, do you have to set a time? Let's say 2 minutes. So these are some options of ways that you can stay connected with us. Let us know. This is a quick feedback loop for us. What's interesting to you? What would you like us to follow up with you about? I can't promise we'll do it today, but we will be doing it soon, in addition to sending you the recording and the links. Take a look at those things.
Somebody's having a problem with that link. I'm looking at it right now.
It is 1 o'clock. It is the top of the hour. I know some folks need to tune out. If you do want to stay a little bit longer, I'll stay on the call and leave the room open for another 15, 20 minutes if anybody has particular questions or you want to talk. And as you're completing the poll, I want to leave you with one thought.
Poll up for people.
Do you see the poll? No, they don't see the poll. Jen, you're the host. I don't have access to the poll.
Yeah, it says that it's up. I wonder who I'm polling. Well, let me end that poll because nobody's answering it.
Why don't you try it again?
Okay.
I see it now.
Now I see it.
Okay. Sorry, folks.
Toby, I think when your screen was shared and I launched it, that might do something. So let's keep an eye on that learning for next time.
Great. And do
Okay,
scroll
you all
down.
see the poll, right?
Mm-hmm. You can click more than one.
Great, people are answering. Okay. And the biomimicry link looks like it's okay. Is everybody good with that? Message me privately if not. Oh, you guys are so sweet.
I know a lot of people are having to leave. If you do need to leave, thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you for clearing an hour of your time. I do want to leave you with one thought for those who are still here. We are just approaching the full moon, and there's this very potent period right now between the spring equinox and the first full moon of spring, where this time is setting this year's new season of growth into motion. The seeds under the ground are getting increasing light every day, and they're starting to burst out of their little shells, and the DNA that's embedded in those seeds is moving forward. All this light that's streaming from the sun really is information. So this is a particularly strong time to be outside and to be asking, what is this cycle that's being put into motion now? What will this season, this year bring? And to listen and sense as you're hearing the response from that internally and around you. So again, big thanks to Jennifer, thank you. Big thanks to Pamela and Roxy. Rachel, I'm so glad that you were able to tune in for a minute or two, or the whole thing, but we could see.
Up.
I froze up. I don't know
back.
what to do about them. Deep, deep gratitude for you all putting nature and learning from the natural world is something that was important to you today. As I said, I will stay on for a little while and we can open up some conversation. In fact, I wonder, Jennifer, is it possible to unmute everybody and we can hear each other's voices and just say goodbye together as folks are leaving the call?
Done.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
That is so funny.
Adios. Adios.
Toby.
Funny.
Again.
You all, thank you.
Sweetie.
Goodbye.
She says, she pretends that she's this playful, happy
Hey.
person. And so sometimes
I'm gonna mute again for a minute.
She doesn't bring that out for longer
Thank
than
you, Toby.
Goodbye, friends.
let's go out and dig for worms. No, she's
All right, it's yours. The mic is yours again, Tobe.
I see your hand up. You had your hand up earlier. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to you, but I can get you now. Are you still there?
Are you talking about me, Lori?
Lori, hi, Lori, yes.
Hello.
You had your hand up to say something, to have a question. Hi, Lori.
Hi. I've got your cards. I love them. I've ordered like so many for friends through the years. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I just have to say, you are a natural at this. so grounding, so in control in the way that everyone's helping and supporting the team. I mean, just brilliant. So thank you. And I had a question for you. I wanted to know if you could give us an animal or something from nature that we can attune to right now. Because one of the things that I've been noticing that's been going on is that, you know, we are in a world, especially the US, is so extroverted. Everything is doing, doing, doing. And we know, and sometimes women are very in tune to the idea too, that we have our cycles every month, that we have to come in and rest and then go forward with doing. And so it's sort of this like being together, being alone, and attuning and doing. And I'm wondering, it might be the seasons, but I hope our world emerges with giving people space and time to be alone and to contemplate and then come forward and contribute. I wonder what in nature might be some of the best examples of that.
Well, you know, we're certainly getting to practice that now, aren't we? That time of being alone, being able to contemplate, then being able to come out and forward. You know, it reminds me of, I have a colleague, I don't think he was on the call today, but a friend named Gary Cosman has a company called America Learns. And his company a few years back was just growing like crazy. They do data support for mentoring organizations. And it was just growing super fast, and they couldn't quite stay on top of it. And so toward the end of the year, when companies are usually boosting their sales and trying to meet their annual targets, round about the beginning of November, he wrote a letter to all of his clients and all of his people and said, we are going into hibernation. We're putting the whole company into hibernation. We're going to go inward, and we're going to rest. And we're going to review all the things that you have been telling us over the years that we should be doing to be even more effective. And we're going to readjust our systems, but we're going to be very, very quiet, no external communication. And he did. Put his company in hibernation. The following year, when they implemented all of those things that they instituted during hibernation, their sales went up 25%. So from a business point of view, that was very, very important. Right now, this period is interesting because things are coming out of hibernation, right? And I try not to just point us towards single species. One of the things that we make a practice of in the social innovation realm of biomimicry is to really look at deep patterns, because, you know, I'm not going to be like a lion or a bee, or, you know, it doesn't help we're humans, we're different. But when you look across all of the natural world, what you see is that most organisms have the equivalent of an inhale and an exhale. You know, all of what I'm paying attention to now is all the plants that are just bursting through, that are starting to grow the whole winter. The reasons why my tulips and my daffodils and my peach tree can be bursting forward with life now is because they spent a whole winter building up that energy and being in rest and being in what would be the equivalent to us of reflection and storing our energy. So I'll offer that. I think now is the time to be watching and being grateful for the inner that has been happening over the winter as the spring is now bursting forward anew. Thank you. Anyone else have a comment or a question for each other? We've still got about 45 people on the call. Anybody want to unmute and chat?
I think what's really...
Hi, Toby.
Oh, sorry.
Oops,
There's
sorry.
Michelle. Go ahead, and then we'll go.
Okay. One nice discovery that I've made in the last few weeks with my students is that from the beginning of the semester, and those students that I had last semester, I usually start the class with a meditation. And before, when nothing was unique like now, they would you know, deal with it in some ways. I think they were just like, okay, well, we're just going to do this meditation. But now they are asking for longer meditations, and they're really, really hungry for it. So it's really nice to see that people are seeing the value behind the meditation and the allowing yourself to be calmer. And I just love seeing how they're now, because they were doing it for a little while, now they're primed and it's easier for them to do the meditation. Even on Zoom, when I say, okay, let's do the meditation, they all just unmute and they do all the positions with their bodies, and they take a deep breath, and then they go into the meditation phase. So it's really nice to see that practice is coming into some weight now.
Beautiful, yeah. I like to think of myself as somebody who meditates, and the truth is that I've been meditating so much more during this time than I ever had, and there's absolutely value to it. Yeah. By the way, folks, there's another thing we can do on Zoom, which is if you go down to reactions, you can clap or give a thumbs up if you want to acknowledge something that somebody else says. So if you're like, yes, I believe in that too. Tara, did I see you start to speak? Love to hear your voice in this gathering. Tara Brown.
Yeah, hello everyone. So nice to just, I was about to get off and it's like, I don't have to get off. I can just sit here with everyone. So that global attunement from my local place. And one of the comments I was wanting to make earlier is that I've found during this time, just as Toby, you mentioned that when we walk into a room, energetically, we imbibe others, we feel, it's unconscious, but we get it. And that's not available to us in this new forum, or it's less available. I know I'm less able to attune with people emotionally and psychically and energetically from this medium. And so in my work and with my loved ones, well, my work folks are loved ones too, Toby, Pamela, others, but is that, so what I found as the changes is that, and so I'm really feeling this as we have gone forward in this conversation of how do we give love and gratitude in a more extrovert way, in a sense, then it's often just there and assumed and felt, and you can't feel it as much. There's more hesitancy around what are we getting from the other person. Words, visual are one thing, but then what's under that? And so I'm really feeling the need as far as changing context of how do we attune differently and yeah, especially with gratitude and love, help people feel felt and heard and seen more strongly than we normally do, right? Or in new ways. That's an edge I'm exploring on. And because people are also more sensitive, more stressed, and so we don't always assume. So assuming goodness. So anyway, that's some of what I'm wrestling with as we go forward, and I've really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you, Tara. And I hear your wisdom coming through to assume goodness, to be paying attention that there are ways that we have been receiving energy and love from one another that aren't as available to us now as they have been. So putting more attention toward that, more deliberateness toward that, more awareness toward that. Yeah. And one of the things we can learn from nature is about signal and response. Feedback loops happen in the natural world very, very quickly. Learning and growth and development happens in nature through a constant cycle of signal, response, and immediately implementing. So I think that even though we're much more alone and separated from our folks, we can be sending signals, even just little signals. Hey, I love you, I'm thinking about you. Hey, you're on my mind. Whether it's a text or a call or an invitation to a Zoom or just some little thing, having those reminders that there are folks out there that are thinking about us. I'm trying, if somebody pops into my mind, I'm trying to just trust that and send some kind of little signal out there because it might really be making a difference for them on that day. Thank you. Who else has a thought or a practice or some way that they're learning about attuning to their context that they want to share, or a question? If you're nervous about just jumping in, you can raise up your hand and I'll call on you, or you can just unmute yourself and jump in.
Hi, I'm going to jump in. Can you hear me?
Hi,
Harry.
I sure can.
So one of the most profound experience that I found is this notion of social distancing. And there seems to be a 6-foot radius that we're supposed to maintain.
Yeah.
And it turns out the electromagnetic field of our own heart is that field distance. And if we are distancing ourselves, perhaps we can sensitize ourselves when we come back to the crowd. We'll have a greater sensitivity towards each other. And the electromagnetic field of our own heart is directly similar to the electromagnetic field of the planet. So we have this resonance factor that we can pursue and begin to implement and become more aware of.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harry. I've been noticing, I live near a place where people can walk along a trail, and I've been noticing that people are distanced, but not quite 6 feet. And then we remember and we make a little bit more room. But I wonder if that has to do with what you're pointing to, Harry, that we know we need to be distanced in order to protect each other and ourselves and our whole community. And yet that electromagnetic field draws us together because we also need connectedness. And let's not underestimate that. We are social beings. So to be able to store that and deliberately retune again when conditions change. Thank you.
May I add to that a little bit? I just loved that share. Thank you so very much, Harry. Something that it just reminded me that something that's surfaced during this time for me has been the notion of boundaries. And it's something that I think a lot of people have difficulty with because boundaries can feel like abandonment. But we know in nature, boundaries are very real. The porcupine's like, boop, you know, and the cactus like, I got some water I need to protect. And I'm a career coach, and I've been working with people about how boundaries actually are quite loving because we don't want to destroy a creature by taking all of its water. We need it to stay in the desert whole as a cactus. And so one of the boundary issues or opportunities is this idea of almost within your own heart or spirit, asking another being, may I enter your energy field? And just having that sense of may I is so humbling and so kind because we barrel into it. Certainly with social media, there is no longer any sort of sense of kindness. So even just holding that notion now and asking, even when you go up to a tree, before you even touch it, put your hands all over it, do anything, even consider, may I enter your energy field now? Feels really healing.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Anybody who hasn't spoken up that'd like to? Joanna, hi, good to see you.
Hi. For me, what I'm struggling with and what so many of us here locally are struggling with is that we already had a big challenge, which is revolutionizing our country and fighting injustice.
And Joanna, really, tell people where you're from.
I'm from Lebanon. I'm from Mount Lebanon. And what's been happening, we've been having a revolution, and it's something that is really dear to our heart because we've had so many systematic traumas, one after the next, and now we have the chance to really to change our country for the better, for it to really answer to the people's needs, to local people's need, and to be pragmatic, and also to resemble the land, the rich land that we come from. It's a beautiful Mediterranean land. And what we're struggling with, for example, I was talking to friends about the BSI Dam. There's a valley that they're destroying to make a dam, and it's not needed. And we found that in the end, according to studies, it will have polluted water. The water will not be very valuable to Beirut. They said that they're making that project to provide water for Beirut. They'll be destroying the entire valley ecosystem. There's a seismic risk, and we have also human heritage, historic heritage in this land. Yet they're going about with the project, and they're not concerned. So we have a huge disconnect between the people who are ruling this country and our life and what we need and our aspirations, which is. And now I think what happened with the corona, first of all, we were very struck and deceived because we have so much work to do as a revolution and fighting, but at the same time, taking the step back and reflecting on our next steps and how we will go about in processing this change and doing it in the least detrimental way, because we the last thing we want is another war or fights or conflict. Yeah. So how we will go about in making changes. So. And I love the idea of hibernation. Maybe that's it. It's really assembling all your energy and your well-being to be able to act properly and do the right actions at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming. And there's another Joanna in the house who also wanted to speak. Joanna Nelson, hi.
Hi, good to see you. Yeah, I just had a couple. So when Harry talked about electromagnetic fields of our hearts, I spent 2 months on the Juneau ice field in Alaska studying climate change. And so being on rock and ice for 2 months and coming off the other end and feeling the earth radiate heat back at me for the first time in 2 months was like, whoa, 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 it's so much heat. And smelling Sitka spruce. And so just getting like, I have a really good feeling about how it feels to go without for a length of time and then like feel it and smell it. So that was just a response there. And I wanted, my kind of question or putting it out there is, I work for myself, and all of my projects, field projects or science literature projects are tanked. And so applying for jobs, and I get back like, this search is on pause indefinitely. And so how to just the like spring, not spring, like spring, winter, you know, of like, hey, well, just keep plugging and store things up for when we have motion again, or the like, who even cares what I do, you know? So I guess I'd love to hear from you or anybody about that feeling of like, we're hibernating and the world outside says it's spring, and we're also on pause. So just working with those mixed messages.
It's no wonder that our brains are emitting threat signals and we're disoriented, right? And we can't sometimes, I don't know if this is true for the rest of you, but sometimes I'm just like, forget things or can't do things that I know I can do. Like my brain is responding to that total uncertainty and disorientation, and the signals are not congruent with what we expect them to be. And yeah, it's spring, and yet everything's shutting down. We're in, but it's a crazy time. Like we can't expect, people keep saying the new normal. I don't think this is the new normal. I think we are in this liminal space where, if anybody's familiar with William Bridges' work about transitions, where he talks about how, you know, there is transition times are where your whole identity is being called into question, whether it's organizationally or culturally or individually, where you're no longer what you were and you're not yet what you're becoming. And this he calls it the neutral zone. I call it the messy middle. This in-between space, this liminal space, is characterized by a lot of uncertainty and confusion, and things don't make sense, and it sometimes feels like you're on quicksand, and it's just, it is part of it. And hopefully we collectively are transitioning to something that will be much more life-affirming and much more equitable and much more just, and a whole different kind of ways that we do business. But we don't know. All we know is where we are right now. And there is immense possibility in this time, and also a lot of uncertainty. I feel you, Joanna. I hear you.
Yeah, thank you. And just for me, in closing, to keep it short, it's funny having read Joanna Macy and heard Joanna Macy about the great unraveling, and that still some part of me thinks incremental slow change of like, wait, the great unraveling was fast. And that's the nature, you know, so that I do systems thinking, and that I've heard, it's so funny of like, wait, that was a fast big thing. So yeah, looking for the like, this window open, this big crash happened, and what can we make? Thanks.
Yeah. Catherine May, I think I saw your hand up. Hi, good to see you.
Yes, good to see you too.
From Brooklyn.
From Brooklyn, New York, yes. Thank you, and to echo everything that you have just said, what has been very present for me is this incredible transition, and the moments that I can hold still and really ground myself, then I feel more than an hibernation, it feels like being pregnant. It feels like it's pregnant with possibility. And when I can manage to keep it like over the weekend, I did not look at news, I meditate a lot, I just daydreamed, and I was able to just stay on that place for a few minutes at a time, and it was blissful to be like, oh, this happened, so then the next thing can happen. And it really gave me hope. It's really hard to sustain. I don't have the recipe, I'm sorry. But it really feels incredibly fecund and pregnant with possibility. So it's an active hibernation that I want to look at.
Thank you for that reframe. Pregnancy, I think, is a better metaphor for what we're talking about, that going in and cooking on something new. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know Catherine, she's a restaurant owner in Brooklyn, incredibly creative in that realm and such a community hub. And I imagine you went from one day of having a thriving business to just, boom, it's all shut down.
Yeah, I had to fire all my people. It's just been heartbreaking. Yeah. Yeah. And exactly right now, reassessing from, which I was doing already. Actually, it's sort of, I smelled the wind coming in January. I was already being like, we need to stop business as usual. My team hated it and loved it. It was like, it's the end of business as usual. I'm telling you, we need to. And so I still take it as an incredible opportunity, although amid all the suffering and the death and the constant imbalances, and it's just like very potent in New York right now. Like, if anything, like I need to lead the way to something that is going to be really attuned to and shifted and part of a real ecosystem with everybody and for everybody. So yeah, feeling it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good. Anyone else want to speak into this circle?
I'll just jump in really quick to speak to Catherine. I'm here in New Mexico, and I want to tell you that we are thinking about New York every single day. My friends and my community are very aware that this is landing on us across the United States in really different ways. And in New Mexico right now, we are really relatively safe. And I just want you to feel our hearts. New York is very much with us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. To you too, Harry. Yeah. Chantel, nice to see your face. Would you like to speak into this group?
Can you hear me?
Who is speaking?
Hello? It's Sarita.
Sarita? Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. This is fantastic. I was writing in the chat box that I'm working with the Presencing Institute, and it is based in Denmark and New York. And it's a really amazing website in terms of opportunities to see how people are navigating this change. And they've been working on this since 2006. So I highly recommend looking at it. I think it would be also a great platform for you, Toby, to be involved, you know, to just get that global reach.
I'm going to put it in the chat so people know. Presencing Institute. This is the work of Otto Scharmer. And many others.
Because, you know, they're really addressing these structural issues that will continue to break humanity and nature down, but it is solution oriented. So it's, I do a lot of research, and Otto came out to Marin County. And, you know, it's rare when you meet a heady, educated MIT guy who is really heart-based. And what he's doing collectively to introduce men into this circle is just blowing me away, because that's part of what I'm seeing is just resistance. I think men are confused about what their place is as women move into a place of feminine power versus dominant power. And so I've just been really blown away by this collaborative conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sarita. Yeah, there are a lot of resources out there. And one of the things that's happening now that I think is kind of marvelous is, you know, you may not be able to get on a plane and go to events from all these different really stellar offerings out there, and great people who are thinking about systems thinking in big ways, and now we can connect online. And I think that the Presencing Institute has been doing some webinars, making them available to people, some of them for free. Neuro Leadership Institute is another good one that I like to tap into. The Biomimicry Institute is doing great stuff. A lot. I mean, I couldn't even name them all. Somebody just put the presencing.org website and link in the chat. Thank you for doing that. So let's be grateful for what this upset has kicked up into the air. And, you know, it's when there's like, if there's a landslide or a forest fire or some kind of big disruption in the natural world, watching what happens next is fascinating, and the successionary processes that come into place. You know, it starts with all kinds of seed ideas, and they gradually begin to, some things take root and provide shelter for others. And in places like Hawaii, where some of us went to last year to study the ecosystem there, the lava would just wipe out everything. But then there'd be these seeds of fertility. If I was actually a biologist, I would remember what they're called. These like little, not seeds, these little like islands. I don't remember what the name of them are, but they're, maybe somebody in this group does. But those little fertile places that are still vibrant and putting energy and life. And then the partners, the birds and the others that come in and bring in new seeds. So there's this whole new way that life reestablishes itself after disruption. And I think that we're beginning to see more and more of that, those islands of fertility, the bridges that connect them, those who bring in seeds, and in very unusual places. So I really encourage everybody on this call and myself and all of us to be kind of creative in where we turn to for inputs and source right now, because there's so much, and it's very valuable, and we never know where the thing that's just exactly right for us is going to be. Let's leave this open for another minute or two. I want to respect Zoom fatigue and know that I think about 90 minutes is really kind of where it starts to wear off, even if I don't want to leave everybody, but it does. So love to you too, Heidi. Good to see you, dear. Chantel, I invited you earlier to speak, and it went in a different way. You were looking like you were getting ready to say something. Do you have something you'd like to share with the group?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. It's nice to hear so many ideas and I guess ways that we've maybe talked about, or vision being that we are kind of forced into doing. So thanks for putting this together, and all the people who are here. Yeah.
Thank you, dear. Anyone else? Any final words? I see Lori and Dee, you have your hand up. Let me just see if there's anybody who hasn't spoken yet, who may want to take this opportunity, maybe feeling a little shy, but actually, yeah, I do want to say something to this group before it closes. Anybody want to put their either literal hand in the air or digital hand on the participant's screen? All right, Dee, I'll circle back to you.
Hi again. I just, Toby, Rachel, I don't know if Rachel's still with us. I've been here, I live in a community of not so many permaculturalists or biomimics, could say that. And I've been ruminating on many of the things that we've spoken about, just sort of privately. And it's so nourishing to connect and hear what you all are experiencing, and I too feel that pregnancy, and also I feel caution because it could go different ways, and I feel fascinated by musing into what systems will emerge from these disruptions.
Yeah, it's not for sure what will happen, and how we engage with it really is important right now. Yeah. Lori, you had something?
Oh, yes. This was such an amazing group, and I just wanted to ask if anybody had a beautiful idea for meditating with nature as your inspiration. I have always found that the traditional meditation of think of your toes and think of your knees and all of that to be really boring, and one of the main reasons why maybe a lot of people don't do it. And it seems like if there was something through nature, and I know it's all over, there are apps and things where you hear birds and maybe, but if anybody has a way that they meditate that draws in nature or somehow uses nature as that channel that makes it so much more enlivening and beautiful, I would love to hear it.
Great. Lori Michelle just put something into the chat, a link for meditainment.com. They take you on adventures in nature and they're all free at the moment. I'll find that out too. And the other thing I would recommend is check out the Biomimicry Institute. They've got, I think we're about halfway through their 30 days of reconnection. It's a little bit more kind of nature journaling as the entry point, but when you're, the idea is to go into a deep observational and perceptual space and state. So it's not a traditional kind of emptying meditation. It's more a focusing meditation, but focusing with your, not hunting for the next sound, really listening for what and tuning into what is there. Highly recommend it. Mm-hmm.
Toby, the little islands of growth in the lava field are called kipukas.
Kipukas! Yay, Michelle! Yay, biologists. I meant to ask biologists and people who know biomimicry to pipe up when I got it wrong, but thank you, kipukas. Mary, I saw your hand up. I don't think we've heard from you. Yeah.
Thank you. This is actually Maya, Mary's daughter, and I just wanted to say that I have a friend, and I call him Simon, and he's a tree that lives a mile and a half down a curvy dirt road, and I go walking regularly and go and embrace him, and it's kind of like a meditation, but it's very engaging, and I really feel like the essence of this being, and I just feel the earth under me, and I try to roll up my sleeves or as much body contact as I can, and I feel like when there's not as much hugs going on, it nourishes me so incredibly deeply. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Beautiful. Taking a walk to go see Simon. I love that. Yeah. Who misses hugs? I miss hugs. Yeah. Good. Anyone else? Joanna Nelson.
This is Flavia.
Flavia.
Hi.
Welcome.
I want to thank you for this huge hug today. And I want to share a reflection about life and how much life is hinging on use of resources and relationships. Mm-hmm. So in this moment, I love changes. And in this moment, I want to share an invitation to think about the possibility of life and this huge resource of love emerging from everybody, deepening within ourselves and with the people around us. And this is incredibly powerful. Reflection brings creativity, ideas, solutions that we can all share, build, to shape the world after the pandemic. However, there are also other resources that may have scarcity, such as, grocery shopping. We are not very comfortable going out with masks. I live in Berkeley, California, so we have an ordinance that now we have to wear masks or cloths or bandanas. And so there is that aspect. Many of us have lost jobs or are in furlough. I'm in furlough as an example. So it's that reconfiguration of resources that are apparently in an unbalanced way. And we are finding that path to the kupukas, the new islands of life, and hopefully we design a better world, because this is a great opportunity right now to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Flavia. Thank you. Beautiful people, I think we will wind this down. We will be sending the recording and the chat. Give me a couple of days to get that out. I am so deeply grateful to have shared this time with you. And I just feel so honored in this hour to be somebody who can help bring nature and put our attention on nature into your life, and that you had a connection with the natural world such that you wanted to come be part of this, and maybe a connection with me such that you wanted to come be part of this. And I find that to be humbling and something for which I'm hugely grateful. Jennifer, anything you want to say to close? No?
I think we're good.
Okay.
I'll stay. Do you want to stay on for just a couple minutes and we'll wrap everything up with everybody else?
Let's do that.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close us out in about 5 seconds. So
if you want to unmute and just say your goodbyes.
Bye.
Thank you. Really
Bye,
wonderful.
thank you.
Great to
Bye,
see
have
you.
a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. It's time to go. That's it.
I think a couple people might be asleep. Let me go ahead and manually check them off.
I'm going to stop recording. Actually, I think you need to do it now.